Welcome back everyone to the channel. My name is Ruben, and as I've said before, we will be doing another video, but this time for SuperSlam. But instead of doing a video about the release notes of all the cards, let's just look into some cards and package it in such a way that newer players can also appreciate. Because uh, this is a pre-release season, so a lot of players would definitely jump into the game with this set. It's a pretty divisive set when it was first released, but I think the hype has increased when everybody noticed and have seen all the good cards, especially the Maori Pleiades. I think the for me the star of the set is the Maori Pleiades and some warrior cards that I'll definitely get. Okay, so for this video, we'll just talk about what to expect for your pre-release and how to prepare for it. I won't teach you which hero is the best, but I'll definitely help you uh, get into the sealed format for Super Slam. Okay, all right, let's begin. Super Slam pre-release season starts this weekend, starting Friday until next week. So please check out your local game store, your favorite LGS, for their schedules because I think they will be running multiple. Because of the current setup now, we would have a pre-release kit which you could buy if you want to play it on your own, or you can buy it and join in events. So inside the pre-release kit, you have one of four promo cards, and this is the only way to get these promo cards. And some of these are actually good for CC. All right, and then you can get the four cold foil equipment, which are definitely good for some of it. I think the chest piece and the arms and the legs maybe are good for Project Blue. All right, and then you get of course tokens and the hero cards. No weapons. So for this set, there are no weapons. Uh, you would only attack with your attack action cards. So inside the pre-release kit, you will also get 8 packs of Super Slam. So 8 packs of Super Slam, which you will be using to create a deck of 30 cards, which we'll be talking about in the next slide. So, okay. From those packs, you get 15 cards instead of the normal 16. All right. I think the reason why they reduce that is because you don't really get any weapons. Okay, I think so. I think so. All right. So from the 15 cards, you will get 11 cards, which are common. That's an assurance. Rare or higher would be two per pack, so that can be two rares, one rare, one super rare, or one rare or one majestic. Okay, and then you also get a rainbow foil, one per pack. That's pretty much assured, and one card in front, which is either a basic expansion, legendary, or a marvel. Okay, and there is also a chance to get a cold foil version of, I think these are equipment and some other cards, which is one per 24 packs. Now this is not so relevant when it comes to the pre-release packs because you only get 8, so it's difficult to gauge this. But when you open boxes and cases, it basically tells you that if you open a booster box, you get one cold foil. This is the same with high seas, but instead of within packs, you get it in the treasure pack. So now we don't have the treasure pack. The cold foils are now back into the booster packs. So one booster box is most likely would have one cold foil. Okay, so to start off, because this is a sealed event, you open your pack, you remove you remove the card in front. All right, which is the basic expansion, legendary, or marvel card, and then your pool of cards would be the 14 cards times 8. So all those cards are your card pool. Now, why is that important? Because you will be creating a deck of 30 cards based on which hero you choose. Now, there are two talents for this set. We have Revered and Reviled. And classes, we have Brute and Guardian. So basically, this is Heavy Hitters Part 2 minus the Warriors. Okay? Because something happened to the Warriors. I really don't know. Okay, so how to choose which hero to play? The best way to go about it, if you ask me, is whichever speaks to you, right? Which hero speaks to you. If you want to Unga Bunga, pick Tuffnut. If you want to play as a sneaky brute slash assassin, play KO. But if you want to play Taylor Swift or you play Tyrion Lannister, it's really up to you. But what you can also do is you check out which cards you have. All right. So there are at least 5 types of cards that you can get here. All right. So that's generic cards, the revered cards, the reviled cards, the brute cards, and the guardian cards. You also have cards which are revered brute, revered guardian, and reviled brute and reviled guardian, which represent for each of our heroes. Okay. Now, what I can suggest is once you open your packs, is you pile them up into these 5 piles to give you an idea which cards you have, right? And that could help determine which hero you want to play. So let's say, for example, you want to play Pleiades, all right? You can only use generic cards. You can only use revered cards and guardian cards. Now, there are also guardian, like I said, right? There are reviled guardian cards and reviled brute cards. You cannot use those, even though Pleiades has revered and guardian. Okay, so you can only use cards that are either generic, revered, or guardian, or revered guardian cards. Okay, so that's the only cards that you can add to your deck. Now, to play SuperSlam Sealed, you have to create a sealed deck of exactly 30 cards. Exactly 30 cards. All right? Plus equipment. So if you happen to get equipment from your sealed pool, you can use that. But make sure, of course, the talent and the class fits Pleiades. And since, again, there are no weapons for this set, you cannot add any weapons. All right? Okay. So we have 4 heroes representing a combination of the 2 talents and 2 classes. All right? And if you look at their abilities, the card decks, they have the instant speed abilities that requires you to tap them. Now, if you're unfamiliar with tapping because you haven't played High Seas, this is similar to other card games where you rotate it clockwise 90 degrees to its side to represent that you've already you've paid that cost of tapping. Now, the tapping is a cost. Therefore, if your hero is already tapped, you can no longer use the ability. Now, you can untap it at the end of your own end phase. Take note, only during your end phase. Okay, so you can use the ability to respond to your opponent playing cards or activating abilities. But remember that you can only untap your hero during your own end phase. Okay, now they also have an ability that whenever the crowd for cheers you for revered heroes or boos you for reviled heroes, okay, you generate or you create a specific token. Okay, now booing and cheering isn't really represented by a tangible card in during the game, but it's an event that occurs, and it's important because some cards check if that event occurred. Now, for reviled heroes, again, it's booing, right? So if you look at low blow, if you've been booed this turn, this gets +3. So let's say Lyath has been booed this turn, then low blow gets +3. All right. For Darling of the Crowd, when this is while this is defending, if you've been cheered this turn, it gets +1. Okay. So this is relevant because number 1, you would generate a token, and at the same time, cards would have additional benefits. Okay, so you take note of that. Okay, let's go to the heroes. So for Tuffnut, you have the ability. You are a revered brute. They have the ability that pitch the top card of your deck if it's a 6. If it has 6 more power, the crowd cheers you. Now, whenever the crowd cheers you, you create a toughness token. This is important because if you haven't noticed, Tuffnut has 3 intellect. It means that during the start of the game and during the end phase, your end phase, you will only draw 3 cards. Okay, but it makes up for it by being able to pitch the top of your deck. Okay, so playing Tuffnut, it's important to understand what cards are left in your deck, so that when you pitch it, you would either get the benefit of the crowd cheering you or be able to uh, pitch for your attacks. Okay, now toughness token is a new token introduced in the game, and which is it's not just tied to Tuffnut, but uh, Tuffnut represents it. Okay, so for the toughness token, this is important for Tuffnut because it adds additional defense value for his action cards. Okay, so because it reads at the start of your opponent's turn, destroy this. Then the next action card you defend with this turn gets +1 this chain link. Okay, so this what you have to remember with toughness is that, let's say you block with 2 cards, with 2 action cards, you have to pick which of those 2 cards is the one defending first. Now, if you chose that card as the one defending first, it gets the buff of toughness. This is especially important for cards like Old Favorite and Disarm, which says that if when this defends, if it has 6 or more defense value, it has an additional effect. Okay, so you have to remember that. Now, this is the pre-release is just a casual event, so you might not be able to remember this at all times. So for older players, for more veteran players, for judges that are playing, just help out. Okay, feel free to ask them. Okay, because they'll definitely appreciate it. They'll definitely be more than willing to help you out. Okay. All right. Pleiades. Pleiades is a revered guardian hero, which whose ability reads: instant tap, remove a suspense counter from an aura you control. You may put a suspense counter on an aura of suspense you control. Now, for Pleiades, she is represented by 2 things: auras of suspense and the confidence token, which she generates whenever the crowd cheers her. Okay, let's look at the auras of suspense first. Okay, so auras of suspense are basically just auras with the suspense keyword on them. When a aura of suspense enters the arena, you get 2 suspense counters, which ticks down. You remove a counter at the start of your turn. Now, Pleiades' ability is important for her because she is now able to control which aura of suspense leaves first, or when they will leave the arena. So let's say, for example, during your opponent's turn, you played What Happens Next and Tensions in the Air. So if you can notice, there are Guardian instants. You can play this whenever you have priority during your opponent's turn. So let's say you played it on your opponent's turn. You played What Happens Next and Tension in the Air. Okay? But before the turn ends, you moved 1 suspense counter from Tension in the Air to What Happens Next. Therefore, during next turn, at the start of your next turn, both of them tick down. What Happens Next has 2 suspense counters on it still, from 3 to 2, and Tension in the Air from 1 to 0. Therefore, Tension in the Air second ability now activates because it leaves the arena, which gives your next attack +4, which buffs your attack. Okay? Now, this is important for Pleiades because she also has the ability to generate confidence tokens. Confidence tokens reads: at the start of your turn, destroy this. Then the next attack action card you play this turn can't be defended by more than 2 non-block cards. Now, this is basically a mini overpower. Okay? Sometimes better, because this also prevents your opponent's equipment. They also prevents them from blocking with their equipment. Okay? So they can only block. There's no the only thing that has no restriction are non-block cards. Block cards. Sorry, non-block cards, which is action cards, attack action cards, guardian instant auras, equipment. They cannot block more than two of those. Okay, which ensures that your next attack will hit your opponent or will force them to block inefficiently. Okay, so for Pleiades, it's important to know which auras you want to stay in the arena and which auras you want to leave and at what moment. Okay, it's time for the heals, or the reviled heroes. First up, we have our reviled brute, KO Strong Arm, which is the newest version of KO, who was introduced as a CC hero back in Heavy Hitters. This current incarnation without the, with just one arm. All right, Strong Arm. That's nice. That's a good pun. Okay, his ability, which reads you start the game with one weapon zone, isn't really important for this format because you don't have weapons anyway. So you only use attack action cards to attack. But his second ability is rather important because it reads instant 4 resources. Tap. Target attack action card you control has 6 base power. So this ability sets the base power of your cards to 6. So, for example, you have Big Bully. Okay? It reads when this attacks a hero, if you have more health than your opponent, than the hero that you're attacking, the crowd boos you. If you've been booed this turn, this card's base power is doubled. Now, there is a rule in Flesh and Blood which states that the setting of base power is calculated first before multiplication and before addition of power. Okay? So, let's say you've been booed this turn. The base power of Big Bully becomes 4 times 2, so 8. The base power is now 8. Okay? Now, if you happen to have my tokens, it adds additional more. Okay? But, if you use KO Strong Arm on Big Bully, what happens is the 4 becomes a 6, and then if you've been booed, the 6 becomes 12, which makes it a really strong card. Right? So, what players are seeing with this KO is you can sneak in damage at instant speed, or you can also use brute action cards that reads if this has 6 or more power, it has +3, right? So if you happen to use KO's ability with flex strength, it would have 6 plus 3, right? Which is 6 plus 3 is what? 9. Okay? At possibly instant speed. Okay? Now, his third ability, whenever the crowd boos you, create a vigor token. This is helpful for him because this gives you a way to more proactively use your ability, which is the setting the base to 6. Okay? So, maybe look for cards that have higher resources and benefit from having 6 power. Okay? So, yeah. Cool. I'll probably play KO or Tuffnut anyway. So, yeah. Okay. Next one. Lyath Goldmane, the first hero in Flesh and Blood that has 5 intellect. And this comes at a cost because the base power and defense of cards you control are halved, rounded up. Okay? So what does this mean? So if you have a 3 power attack, this 3 power becomes divided by 2, which is 1.5. 1.5 rounded up is 2. Okay? So that's the downside of Lyath Goldmane. But his second ability, which reads instant 2 resources tap, the crowd boosts you. defending attack action cards you control get +1 this turn. So, in a way, you are able to make up for it since you have higher intellect. You have better way to pitch for your second ability. So the cards that you block would essentially from 3, if it's say 3, it goes down to 2, and then it just goes back up to 3. Okay? Now, if the crowd boosts you, create a might token. This is again synergistic to his first ability, because if he has because since the power and defense value of his cards are halved, okay, might makes up for it, because any buff given by might to your attack action cards or to your attacks is not affected by it. Okay? Now, you can also benefit from cards that have higher resource requirement. So low power but have abilities that can allow you to spend the cards that you have in your hand. So let's say, for example, Bully Tactics, which allows you to pay up to 3 resources, and you can intimidate your opponent 3 times. Right? And then add it up with might tokens and auras like Leave Them Hanging, which when this leaves the arena, your next attack this turn gets +4. Right? So what this set introduces are guardians that can play around multiple cards to give them taller attacks. So guardian is still a tall, so high power hero, but there are many ways to go about it. Okay? For Lyath, again, your goal is to generate as much might as you could and make your opponent be unable to block it through intimidates. Okay? Because of the reviled actions have intimidate. Okay. If you've noticed in Flesh and Blood, the card text has these words. How like whenever, when, while, and if. We have seen this in all the heroes, which because they have the ability which reads, whenever the crowd cheers or boos you, create X token. So we're quite familiar with whenever, because we've already talked about that. If whenever the crowd cheers you, for example, in Tuffnut's case, you generate or you create a toughness token. Okay, so if you play fight from behind, the crowd cheers you, you create a toughness token. Rapturous applause. When you win a clash, revealing this, the crowd cheers you, and then you create toughness token. Now, this ability, whenever, is checks every time the crowd cheers you. Okay? Now, the crowd cheering, of course, and the crowd booing isn't restricted to your effects only. It was also, if your opponent's effects can cheer you or boo you, it will also trigger. Okay? So whenever the crowd cheers you, you create a toughness token. That's whenever. Whenever is basically whenever the condition occurs. For our hero's case, it is when they are cheered or booed. Then the ability triggers. Okay? Now, for when, unlike whenever, when effects only trigger when the specific condition occurs. So, for example, for Bluster buff is when this attacks, it gets -1 unless you pay a resource. Okay? So that is when this attacks. For Horns of the Spice, then it has when this defends. So it can also be rather specific. So for Tear Down the Isles is when this attacks a revered hero. Okay? And for Rapture's Applause, like we discussed previously, when you win a clash. Okay? So it will only trigger when you satisfy that particular condition. Now there are other in the game in this set there are other conditions. Then let's look into it. Oh, so we have when this leaves the arena, when this hits, when the combat chain closes, or something more complicated is when an opponent's effect put this into your graveyard. Okay, so is uh, when abilities trigger when the condition is satisfied. If and while are quite similar for our purposes, so we're just gonna lump them together. Now, for if, this constantly checks the condition if it is satisfied. Now, for while, this typically refers to a state the object or card is in and checks if that state or condition is satisfied. Then, the ability is active. So, unlike when and whenever, if and while are always active. It continuously checks if the conditions are met. Now, for example, Plate of Tough Love gets +2 defense if you control both a confidence and toughness token. If for some reason you lose one or both of these tokens and no longer control both at the same time, Plate of Tough Love will lose the +2. So, if you gain them again, it gets the +2. Alright? Because it constantly checks. Now, the same applies for Smashing Ground. So, if it has 6 or more power, it gets the triggered ability. Okay? So, if, again, it loses it, then it would lose its triggered ability, which is the when this hits a hero. Okay? So, if and while constantly checks. So, for while, this is more specific. So, for the example of This Day in Delight, you are looking at the state that while this is defending. Okay? And if you boo this turn, this gets +1. Okay? So, if the boo is satisfied, it then gets +1. But only while this is defending. Okay? Instant cards can be played and instant abilities can be activated whenever you have priority. Okay? It doesn't require an action point. That's why it's called at instant speed. But what is a priority? Okay? So these are windows or opportunities to play or activate abilities at instant speed. Okay? Now, when do you have these priorities? Okay? So I call it your priority window. This happens whenever a card is played, an ability is activated, a card effect trigger resolves, or a card becomes an attacking card or a defending card. Now, there are multiple priority windows in the game, but for the purposes of SuperSlam Sealed, these are what is relevant. Okay? Now, this is not an exhaustive list. Like I said, so consult your local judge or consult the veteran players in your LGS. Okay, now, I'll give you an example of how this works. Okay, so example, during the action phase, Tuffnut activates his ability. Before it resolves, there is a priority window given to the turn player. Now, they may choose to play or activate instance or pass the priority to the opposing player. Now, if both player pass priority without playing or activating instance, the window is closed and Tuffnut's ability resolves. Then, another priority window opens for both players. This process is repeated until no other player has taken action. Then, the turn proceeds to the next phase. Finally, a reminder with block cards and defending in general. You can only defend with cards in your hands. So, if it's in your arsenal, you can't defend with it. So, be careful with putting block cards in your arsenal. It's gonna be stuck there. Unless it has the ambush keyword. Because the ambush keyword allows you to defend with a card even if it's in your arsenal. Okay? So, you have a reminder. So the best way is not to put block cards in your arsenal. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much for listening and for watching. I hope you guys learned something new. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And give me your thoughts. What can we do? What can we talk about next? All right? I'll see you. Bye.